it's a constituent. It's a constituent, and then somebody who has also contributed his quota in some of the constituencies. Me for the position of Offensive North parliamentary. At the end of the day, the good people of Offensive North spoke, and the verdict is clear. And the verdict is that they still need me to represent them as a member of parliament, and they will continue.
Of the people's voice.
Right. Rightly so, Mr. Chairman. It wasn't a battle of spiritual, but it was a battle of competence and then the people's choice. And the people accepted me, and they had a lot of confidence in me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, because you worked as Deputy Minister in the last administration, I think it's appropriate if I ask you to explain to this committee if it was a government or government decision for municipal chief executives and district chief executives to execute projects through parliamentary candidates of the New Patriotic Party or in the name of parliamentary candidates of the New Patriotic Party. And if this was sanctioned at the level of the ministry, because it was all over the country, where New Patriotic Party parliamentary candidate, were those put forward as those initiating and cutting sword for construction of projects and commissioning some projects that were executed by the Assembly.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not aware of what the Honorable Member of Parliament for Tamale North is pontificating. What I do know is that members of Parliament and district chief executive, they are very important stakeholders in the development affairs of their district and the constituency. And as a ministry, we continue to advise and urge them to work together so that they'll be able to give meaningful development to the constituents. And that is what I do know. But as to parliamentary candidate commission and all that, Honorable Suhini, I'm not aware. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I want to bring the proceedings to a close in 15 minutes. So I'll give the 5 minutes to you, then I'll bring proceedings to a close.
Chairman, why me? I have like 100 questions. You are giving me. You see, the anti. I want to take him to his CV. Honorable Collins, he and I have served on the health committee for long, so I really know him. 1990 to 1994, 87. You see that there's a 3-year gap. Were you farming cashew?
Academic calendar, it's normally overlaps. So we have 1985, 1986 academic calendar up to 1987 calendar. That is a 2-year program for the advanced level certificate. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, you see that the Sunyan Secondary School, you went there for your A-level, right?
Rightly so, Mr. Chairman.
So you see that it's from 85 to 87. I know during our time after A-level, you do 1-year service before you are qualified to go to university. Even if you add that, it still doesn't give you, it doesn't cover the gap to 1990. Because your University of Science and Technology, the BSc Biological Science,
yes,
was from 1990 to 94.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, it's right. After the graduating from 1987, I had some challenges, so I had to stay home for additional year before entering the university in 1990. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, if we look at the second page of his CV, were Minister of Food and Agriculture, member of the Ministerial Advisory Board. I know you were there to advise on cashew. I mean, you know, you and I have a lot of this conversation, so do you have any special reason why the Cashew Development Board has not been established?
Mr. Chairman, as part of His Excellency's vision of using agriculture to transform the rural economy to trigger rural industrialization, the Planting for Export in the Rural Development Program, which was launched, it was a collaborative effort between the Minister of Local Government and the Minister of Food and Agriculture. As part of the pillars, we have the 3 pillars for that program. The first pillar has to do with the on-farm support, where assemblies has to raise seedlings, and the assemblies also provide extension services to them. And then we put them into cooperatives to be able to link up with the private sector to drive the industrialization agenda. The third pillar had to do with legal reforms. And that under that legal reforms, a bill was sent, a bill was cabinet, and then Parliament passed it. And that bill also begat the National Tree Crop Development Authority. As part of the work of the authority is to develop a framework that will look into the issue, research and all that. So the board was also has to do beyond cashew, bring on board 6 additional crops so that we have one big entity overseeing the development of these 3 crops in addition to the cashew. And the crops, Mr. Chairman, includes the cashew itself, the mango, the shea, oil palm, coffee, and coconut. So instead of coming out with just one board to look at all the issues of cashew, the minister thought that it is more apt to look into the broader framework of bringing 6 commodity chains so that it takes on board all the other issues of marketing, not only in cashew, but the remaining commodity chains. Thank you, Mr.
Chairman, he knows that since the establishment of these 3, what do you call this, 3 crops problem for you and I who are into farming is that you look at this year's pricing, you use all your energy and resources to cultivate, and then before it's time for harvesting, the prices collapse. Or some of the products, their prices will simply just collapse. And you have the glut and the struggle. So the expectation of almost all farmers is that when these authorities are established, it will behave like Cocoa Board, where it guarantees farmers some pricing to help them do planning and be able to recoup their investment. Having served on this Ministerial Advisory Board, what plans do you think the ministry has to be able to achieve this so that farmers can be guaranteed this some security in terms of their outputs?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, you're right. The authorities focus in the thinking of the additional crops. And it's a new establishment. And we believe that when it stands on its feet, issues of pricings will be dealt with just in the same way as that of the cocoa. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly, look at the spelling of Nkrumah. I thought that if you get any spelling wrong, not that of Nkrumah, on the second page where you are talking about teaching assistant, Kwame Nkrumah, University of Science and Technology, the spelling. And then apart from that, look at the period, T.I. Ahmadiyya Secondary School, Kumasi. You were a tutor from 1997 to 2005.
Yes.
Around the same time, you were also a teaching assistant at Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. How do you explain this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chima, it is true. just at the same time as I was doing some teaching at the TIMD Secondary School, I also applied to the University of Science to pursue a master's program. And I had the admission, and I had the luxury and the comfort to combine the two. It's something I did with ease. So, Mr. Chairman, it is true that at the same time as I was teaching in TIMD Secondary School, at least during the tail end of my teaching, I also learning as in my master's program, and I also doing some part-time teaching as a teaching assistant in the Department of Biological Sciences. Thank you, Mr.
So it's not in Parliament alone that we do attempt, or you are attempting. Or lastly, Mr. Chairman, if you look at the private sector, Collins A, C and C Co. and Company Limited. What do you do? What does this company? What is it involving?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the Collins AC&C company is essentially involved in the downstream distribution of petroleum pollutant jointly with Vivo Energy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Honorable, but before I give it to the minority leader, look at your public sector work experience. Deputy Minister, 2016, January 2021. You were not a minister in 2016, please. Should be January or 2017.
Mr. Chairman, it was an error, 2017.
Very well. Yes, Honorable Minority Leader.
Chairman, I should thank you for the opportunity. In King Council, you know, I take particular interest in it because that leads me to Akuma-Addo, and then I know I'm living Ashanti for the Bono region where I get the sweet potato, mango, and others. 1D, 1F, have you been able to promote one in that area? Because lots of horticultural crops in that area, Nana Num and others in that area should be looking at value addition of processing any of the food crops in that area. Any indication that you are providing leadership in that direction?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, in Kinkesu, it's my hometown. That's where I come from. And it's one of the important communities within the Offensive North constituency. And as part of His Excellency's vision to add value to the produce, we have programmed and positioned Offensive North to have 3 of such facilities. We have undertaken serious investment in cashew production. The idea is to lay the foundation, preparing substantial raw materials to feed into a proposed cashew processing factory, which is going to be sited in Kinkesu. As we speak.
Sited where?
At Kinkesu.
When should they expect it? When should the community expect some work to commence on the siting of a cashew processing plant in the community you just mentioned? Thank you, Chair.
The process has already begun. As I said, the critical component of industrialization is the establishment of a sustainable raw material base to be able to do that, which over the years for the past we are working on. And then the land for that, we have also had an engagement with a strategic investor who is ready to establish that factory. Then the second has to do with tomato factory. When we talk about tomato in Ghana, the first thing that has to do with Akuma-Addo. Indeed, to be able to develop on that, we have also, through the collaboration of the Ministry of Food and established one of the government initiative on greenhouse village. It's in Akuma-Addo. The essence of it is to bring technology to bear on the cultivation and the development of Gov'T, and also laying the foundation for the creation of sustainable raw tomatoes for the intended tomato factory that we are. Currently, there's an investor from the UK. It's also undertaking a research to get the right variety, the variety that will be suitable for value addition to be able to do that. And we are hoping that in the course of the foreseeable future, that factory will be established. Then one important town has to do with Afrancho. Afrancho is also the third biggest community in Ofinso North. As we speak, the private sector has also established a starch factory, and it's at advanced stage, over 85 to 90% complete. We are hoping that very soon that project will be completed, so that the cassava farmers also have some relief, because they will have access to good markets to process the factory.
Yeah, Chairman, Mr. Nominee, your ministry is responsible for local government and rural development. One of the major and the pull factors coming through Nasia to Tamale to come to Accra, and it's a scar on all of us, our conscience, that we're not doing enough as a country to provide livelihood for that category of people. Any plans to deal with the rural-urban migration menace? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. The issue of job creation to drive the agenda of rural-urban migration is also core on the implementation of programs in the Ministry of Local Government. There's a project, a well-bound project we call Ghana Productive Safety Nets. It is tailor-made to create jobs for the very poor and the vulnerable within the people within the transitional zones. 80 poorest districts has been identified, and that project is supposed to provide not only the physical assets by way of construction of dams, by way of construction of feeder roads and agricultural intervention. It is designed in such a way that the delivery systems will make it possible for a retention of about 60% of the fund remaining in the constituency, using a program we called labor-intensive public works. That is during the dry spells, when people have to stay out of job for several months. That is where we take advantage of the productive labor to be able to construct the roads. And then we pay them, and the funds remains there. And that has a potential to address that. Linking that project is the agricultural linkages, where we construct the dams and then raise the nurseries. And then we give out the nurseries to the farmers, so that at the same time as we provide the dams, we also encourage them to own at least a hectare of plantation. And then it's also linked to another project we call the productive inclusions, where as a ministry we've targeted to provide 30,000 households within the scope of the project with some level of micro enterprises, and then give them a starter pack to start the venture. I believe that when we continue on that trajectory, a lot more of the people will want to remain.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Nominee. Assembly members, do you subscribe to the proposal that they be paid a token of an allowance?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I subscribe to that, and that is exactly what the status quo. We pay them an allowances. We cannot put them on salary, in the sense that it thrives on the professional skills.
Not salary, a monthly stipend. You can decide that it's not a salary, but just say that in a month, get 400 or 200 Ghana, which is better than the 90 cities they get. Where do you stand on that? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, it's a good thing to suggest, because it encourages many more people to contribute to the development of the community. In doing so, we are also mindful about the kitty. And that is why the program of local governance thrives on the professionalism, the professional expertise of teachers, lawyers, and all that. But that notwithstanding, the ministry is providing a lot of interventions by way of enhancing revenue generation, so that when the assemblies are able to generate enough revenue, then they will be able to have enough resources to implement their medium-term expenditure framework, and also be able to provide sufficient allowances to the assembly members. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
National address infrastructure. Have you read the Supreme Court ruling on Bodo Ayeni Richard Kwashiga on the District Assembly Common Fund to appreciate what is it that must come to the fund established within the meaning of Article 252 of the Constitution?
Mr. Chairman, I haven't read that. I haven't read, and then as you are mentioning it, it means that it's something that is there and it will help promote the cause of local governance.
Because the ruling is significant in appreciating how my total revenue is determined and what percentage of that revenue must be dedicated to the District Assembly Common Fund, which largely becomes a primary reliable source of revenue for your ministry and for the state. You haven't read it?
I haven't read it, but I have some information.
Will you ask the Honorable Obiamwa, the Senior Deputy Minister, to give you a copy of the ruling for your purposes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You need to,
I'll do that. Yes.
Because when you bring the formula, now we'll be interested in knowing what the total national revenue is. Now we'll compute a percentage of it. But do you share the view that, it used to be 5%, this Assembly Common Fund was increased to 7.5%. Because of budget rigidities, it was reduced to 5%. In order to make more resources available for local government and decentralization in Ghana, would you subscribe helping your minister to adjust it upwards from the constitutional at least 5% to something more?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, any activity that will bring liquidity in the performance of the district assembly to be able to enable them to implement developmental projects for the benefit of the community, I do subscribe. And I also do subscribe that they need to intensify their skills in the internal revenue generation so that they will be liquid enough to be able to undertake most of their development projects. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mobile application installed for us to be able to monitor BEVs everywhere in the country. I mean, now with Momo and mobile money, that is the innovative. I saw in your CV, you say you are champion in innovation. So go and innovate BEVs and DEVs registry. Do I have your assurance?
Mr. Chairman, the assurance catching the Birth and Death Act, which seeks to decentralize the registration of birth and death, something that also seeks to deepen our process of decentralization. It's a good thing, and the assurance is that I'll support my minister.
Of the Appointments Committee. I wish you well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much for attending upon the committee to answer our questions. You will hear from us later.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. That should bring us to the end of considerations for today. Another member should stay back, take decisions on the nominees now and then.
They might to some kakre wa supreme.